Hallo und herzlich willkommen zum zweiten DOK.fest at Home. Ich begrüße Sie hier herzlich aus dem Silbersaal des Deutschen Theaters. Und ich freue mich sehr, diesen Film Ihnen jetzt vorstellen zu dürfen, vor allem den Regisseur und den Protagonisten. Es ist ein Film aus unserer Doc-Music-Reihe und dieser Film ist nominiert für den Kino-Publikumspreis, gestiftet vom Bayerischen Rundfunk und von Dreisat. Sie stimmen natürlich ab, wer am Ende den Publikumspreis gewinnt. Und ich freue mich jetzt sehr, Ihnen den Regisseur von A Symphony of Noise vorstellen zu dürfen, nämlich Enrique Sánchez Lansch. Hallo.
Hallo.
Schön, dass Sie bei uns sind. And we switch to English now because you have brought along your protagonist, the sound artist, and many people call him an activist too, Matthew Herbert. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
Enrique, can you tell me about why you picked Matthew Herbert as your next subject for a music documentary?
Yeah, I'd like to know that.
You want to say it? Okay, no, Matthew, you go first.
I want to know why as well.
Okay, yeah, tell us.
Well, I mean, it was a long process, as you will see in the film. It was a process that took us more than 10 years. But, well, it was a quick... I was sort of... I mean, I'm a musician, and so sound and the power of sounds and the rhythmic quality of sounds, the musical quality, was something that always intrigued me. So when I had the occasion to meet Matthew to follow just one of his projects, it immediately made click, and I was very intrigued to know more about his work. And so I started to follow his projects, and then to sort of build the idea of how can we do a real film. And it really came together when he told me about his idea to write a description of sounds, which then resulted in his book, The Music. And so I thought, well, that gives me the possibility to cover many different projects, many different facets of Matthew's creativity. So,
did you say yes, Matthew, because Enrique is a musician too? Because you felt there's a connection, somebody who's also a musician and a documentary filmmaker can make the perfect portrait?
I think there's definitely a part of that. You know, when I met Enrique, there was a French guy, Jean-Claude, who was a really eccentric old documentary filmmaker. And he's like a mad uncle. And I really like him. He's really interesting, curious guy. But I hope he doesn't see this, because I don't mean it disrespectfully, but I don't think he quite really understood what I was trying to do. And when I saw how he'd edited some of the footage together, the ideas were all jagged, the ideas were all broken. And so I really, when I got to spend time with Enrique, it was very easy. And, you know, one of the things that I really like about him, it's a bit like relationship counseling, isn't it, this conversation?
Yeah, I have my table. Yes, tell me.
One of the things I really like about him is he's a really good listener, and that was something that was really important to me, because and I guess if you see the film, you see this, but I'm trying to work these things out. You know, it's not like I've discovered some great secret of the universe, but just that I found I think a really exciting process, or a way of listening that I didn't know existed before I started working like this. I don't have any answers. And so I was drawn to working with not just Enrique, but his whole team, the producers, and all the people that he worked with, just because they were up for engaging in the idea of listening, which I think politically as well, I think is really, we know now that listening is as important as anything nowadays, you know.
It's funny that you talk about how well Enrique and his team, how well they listen, because I was wondering actually about the shooting and the filming of the film, because were there a lot of interview questions, Enrique, that you asked? Because it feels to me like Matthew is simply talking to you like to a friend. It doesn't feel like a journalistic film, you know, when he's... Please tell me about that, Enrique. Did you ask a lot of questions, or were you more just there and Matthew talked to you?
I mean, in a way, I feel there's a big compliment to be called somebody who immediately tells you that he's a good listener. And I think it's an overall approach I have to films and to my protagonists, that rather than being there and having a list of questions and saying, yeah, no answer to this and that, and I rather want people to talk about what they have to talk, and so to proceed to what they really have to say. It was very important to me in this case to get to know more about the core of his work, and to get on this journey, because for us it was a journey too. We didn't know what the film would be like, and how Matthew's work would develop over the years, and what kind of things he would be touching. But it felt exciting from the very beginning to see that there was enough trust from Matthew's side to take us with him on this journey. And I think listening also on this very simple level of tell me, show me, is one of the very important ingredient to me to documentary filmmaking, and more so in a project that is so much about listening on many different levels.
You mentioned the novel already, and I read about the film before, that this is kind of the starting point for the film. And when I watched it, I was actually surprised how much I learned about Matthew Herbert and about projects that have been, you know, that happened a long time ago. Was that important to you, Matthew, to have a film that captures the core of what you do and is, I would say, easily approachable even to people who haven't, I don't know, listened to many of your albums before?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, it's quite a strange position sometimes I find myself in, which is I do a lot. I've always done a lot, and I don't mean that as a sort of and it's not always a good thing either, you know, like one minute I'll start down this way and I'll go follow this idea, and then I'll swerve and do something else. It's not always a good thing, but I just it's always something, you know, you're always doing something. And actually because this process was done over 10 years, actually they managed to film a whole variety of different projects, but this is probably a 20th of what I did in that period. You know, I did lots of different things, and I kept thinking, oh, I wish Enrique was here to see this to see this thing where we did a project where we drove a car onto the stage, and then we threw newspapers at the audience, and then, I don't know, all this whatever stuff we were doing. But I think at its heart, I'm trying to, at the heart of my work, what I'm trying to do is understand what happens when you make music out of sound. Like, what happens if you make music out of, I don't know, do you have a dog?
No. I wish.
You don't have a dog, okay. Do you have a cat?
Allergic.
Oh, you're allergic, okay.
This is not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere.
I wish.
Okay, well, let's take your house. Let's say your house was, let's say somebody drove a truck into your house deliberately, okay, and took it down, and we have a recording of it, and I made a piece of music out of it. How does that change the relationship with what our idea of music is? What does that change our relationship to sound? And what are the ethics around that? Where does the power lie? Whose story is it? Is it your story? Is it my story? Is it the truck driver's story? Like, what can we use? What materials could we use your house to make the sounds with? You know, these are all questions that you don't have when you sit down and play the piano. You know, it means music has changed into something completely different, and we're working in a completely new form. And in a way, this is something that documentary filmmakers have been thinking about since the beginning of filmmaking. You know, but we've never had that in music. We've never had non-fiction or documentary music making before. So these are new questions, and I guess what was important to me was being able to see, was for an audience to be able to see a number of different approaches to the same problem, basically, and like, what happens if you come this direction? What happens if you come that direction? How does it all fit together?
If we had a normal documentary film festival in Munich, we could, of course, watch that film in a beautiful cinema, and we'd have a beautiful sound system. And of course, we can't do that right now, since COVID. And to be honest, when I watched the film, it took me 3 different setups at home to find the perfect, because I felt embarrassed to talk to you both. Because first I watched it on my laptop, and I can't do that. And then I tried to put it on my TV, and then I actually watched it at the broadcast station that I work for, because they have, you know, the best sound system and
nice.
the biggest monitor. So that's a question for both of you. Matthew, if you want to go first. Where should people watch it, and what kind of, I don't know, is that important to you? I guess it is, but tell me about it.
I think if the sound team have done their job properly, it shouldn't matter where you watch it. And I think it's really, I think this is maybe and thank you for going to all that trouble. So I don't want to say it wasn't worth it. And of course, you know, a lot of time and effort has gone into making it sound good. And Pascal, who did some of the mixing, did a great job. And but I think, you know, I think it's still a recording. You know, it's a recording, and it's a recording made by somebody. And this is over 10 years. So some of it is the original is on MP3, some of it is on tape, some of it is really nicely recorded, some of it's badly recorded, some there's road noise, some there isn't. You know, it's a patchwork and it's a mess. And I think, you know, the really beautiful thing about sound is it's just the movement of air. You know, that's all it is. That it's just air coming at you in different ways. And yes, you can try and contain it and put it in a really good format and have it in amazing Atmos. And of course, you'd Dolby Atmos, and you'd want everybody to listen to it in that way. But ultimately, you know, it's about ideas. You know, that's really what I'd like the situation where people could be open to having a conversation about an idea. And the sound of it would be nice if it sounds good, but it's not, I don't want sound to be venerated or to be held up as something perfect or pure or something like that. It's messy, and I love that about it.
Do you agree, Enrique?
I absolutely agree. I was wondering what Matthew would be saying, but absolutely agree. On one hand, of course, we worked a lot to have like the perfect idea of it in a movie theater, but with the perfect sound system and so on and so forth. But I hope, and I know after having been to test screenings to hear it, and then I had to go back for some corrections and to watch it again on the laptop with headphones, no headphones, and it was always like, oh my God, I have to go back to this. But still, on the other hand, I hope the film is made in a way that those projects, that those ideas, that those moments captured transpire what's important about it. And so in a way, you listen something despite the poorer technical quality that might be available to you, but the essence of it will be there, and help people to develop thoughts, and more so to open up their ears when once they have finished the film.
And yeah, I had a really nice Nagra which is like the classic sound recording thing for the film. Sound has been done with Nagra's super expensive Swiss technology, and I have one of these that I used to, and sometimes still record sound with. And I went to record the birth of the pig that you see. Yeah. You see, part of the thing is that filming the pig. And so the farmer called me up and he's like, I think the pig's coming. I think the pig's going to be born. Can you come now? And so I'm like, okay, I've been waiting 6 months for this bloody pig to come. Because normally the pigs often come at 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that. But one came at a reasonable time. So I said, I think it's coming. So I'm there and I'm with my high speed, fancy, high sample rate recorder trying to get the perfect sound of this pig being born. And the pig was in labor for 5 hours. And after 3 hours, I ran out of battery and still no pig. So then I used my backup, which wasn't very good. And then I used my phone and that ran out of battery. And then after 5 hours, the pig was born. And I recorded it on a crappy video camera with crappy sound. So, but that's, in a way, that's part of the, that's part of the story. It tells you that the natural world isn't there for our convenience. You're there to tell a story, and actually it's a long period before a pig's being born. And so for me, the format tells you part of the story.
In the film, we can see you, Matthew, putting up that picture of Mahler and, to get in the right mood, to change the atmosphere. How did the camera and how did Enrique actually affect you when you do things? Because I imagine it affects everything. When somebody's there, sometimes you talk to him, you're being watched all the time.
Well, they were quite discreet, so I like that. I think, I've worked with other people doing it, and there was one film crew where the sound guy had a really bad cough, and he would just cough all the time whilst you were trying to record. And I was like, you're the sound guy. Stop coughing. But I think, I don't know, I don't have a very interesting answer about that one. I'm really sorry. I think it's just, I studied drama at university and did a lot of, and still work quite a lot in the theatre. So I'm used to the idea of a performance starting and stopping, or something beginning and something ending, and what you need to do. And in some ways it helps, because particularly in conversation, because it helps you bring clarity to the idea. If you know that it's being filmed, you can't, it's going to be there forever, or a version of forever. So it can sometimes help to just force you to try and articulate an idea more clearly. But other than that, again, this is another thing that I love about listening, is the political gesture of it, which is, to do it properly, you need to be quiet, So you have to shut up and you have to be quiet. And and this is what, you look around the political leaders, you look around at someone like Donald Trump, or something like that, who's an incredibly bad listener, like worst kind of, and so many people, or so many things like on Facebook, everybody shouting or saying their opinion and things like that, instead of taking time to listen. And actually the film is all about listening in a way. So I think all that between me and Enrique and the team was to do is to create a space where listening was a logical thing to do. And as long as you're doing something with integrity and in the right way, then I think it's nice to share it with somebody, It's nice to share an experience with somebody.
I have a pretty technical question, Enrique, but I was wondering, because Matthew talks about, I think it was 186 hours you spent on recording the tree. And I was wondering, how much material did you have, Enrique? Did you record as much to find those perfect scenes that we see in the film? Or how much did you shoot? Was it very effective? I'm confused. I'm not sure. Sometimes I feel like I know how you did it, but I'd like to know.
On one hand, of course, I mean, you see two little extracts of a project where Matthew worked with his band on an open stage for 8 days, and we were shooting 8 days with 2 cameras, and then you have like a 3-minute scene and a 4-minute scene in the film, and that's it. So there is that relationship. On the other hand, we always were struggling to find proper financing, so we couldn't afford to shoot like 100 days. So we really had to. I mean, what I would do is to meet regularly up with Matthew, and then he would tell me all the new 25 projects that he was going to do in the next 3 months. And they were all exciting, but I had to make a choice and to see, okay, I think this is good and this is good, and to use my instinct somehow and to build it up. So it was a big, and I never counted the number of hours, but it was still a reasonable amount. And I'm pretty proud about the ratio of how many projects we followed and how many projects are actually in the film. So it's not like there is like 30 projects that we filmed completely and that are not in the film at all. So that's not the case.
I have one last question, Matthew, because in the film you talk about silence, and you talk about, I think you call it gaps of life. When something happens, then you're just shocked and it's silent. And because that's such an accurate description of the world, I feel like we are experiencing now for more than a year. I would totally call it a gap in my life since COVID. And I was wondering, how does the pandemic sound to you? Because it is a weird time. To me, it is a very quiet time, and it's a very strange gap of life.
Yeah, I think what's extraordinary about it is how everybody has, I think probably nearly everybody will have had like the soundscape sort of twist. It's like if you imagine that the world that you hear is like a helmet, that you've got like a helmet on and you're hearing. So right now I'm in I'm on my farm where I live, and I can probably hear 100 meters in a circle in a radius around me or something like that. And wherever I go, I have this sort of radius. I think of it almost like a helmet or something like that. And it's almost like during this year, it's almost like having that is all shifted round, So for example, millions of people were no longer in offices, So now they're living at home, and now you're having to cope with neighbors, or there's a different kind of silences, or, one of the biggest complaints is, the biggest complaint in Britain of sound nuisance is wind chimes, those little metal things that dangle in the wind, like ding, 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 from neighbours. That's the #1 complaint in Britain. And you think, oh, that's a really pretty delicate sound, and it's beautiful, but it drives, if it's not your sound, it drives you absolutely crazy coming from the next door's place. And so I think that's what, for me, that's what COVID has been really interesting sonically, is just how different all of our worlds have suddenly sounded. That people aren't surrounded by hubbub and noise in the office. They're surrounded instead by their partner, or, like now when I call my telephone company to ask them about my account, they have a recorded message saying some of our people are working from home, so you might hear a child in the background or a cat, and,
Really?
we're sorry. Yeah, we're sorry about this, but, under the circumstances, we'll hope you accept it. And so I think that's really interesting. And of course, it's really brilliant with less airplanes overhead, and being able to hear much more of the bird song and the natural sort of patterns of things. That's obviously much more positive. But it's just how collectively we all hear something different. I think that's a really thrilling thing that I never thought would happen in my lifetime.
So I would love to say thank you very much, Matthew Herbert and Enrique Sánchez Lansch. Thanks for talking to me and bringing at least some beautiful noise into our lives here in Munich. And I will switch to German because otherwise my brain will explode. It's too difficult for me. So thank you very, very much. Und ich möchte Ihnen diesen Film unbedingt ans Herz legen, wenn Sie sehen möchten, wie eine Trompete frittiert wird zum Beispiel. Eine der schönsten Szenen aus A Symphony of Noise. Thank you very much and have a great time and hopefully see you next time in Munich in real life. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vielen herzlichen Dank.